the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity podcast. Today's topic is understanding intuition and getting into the flow with my guest, Vincent Melling. Vincent is an author, speaker, teacher, and ICF-accredited coach, and his recently published book, Getting into the Flow, describes how he received a flow of synchronicities, coincidences, chance meetings and calls, opportunities, and events occurring in perfect timing when he went to Uluru for a global meditation on the December 2020 solstice. Vincent's book also describes how you can use intuition to create magic flow in your own life, and Vincent's coaching aims to guide you to find this magic and flow to speed your journey to creating what's in your vision. So Vincent, how's it going?
Oh, good. Thanks, Jahan. And you're absolutely right. The book does tell you how you can develop your intuition. I'm just going to hold it up here, and I am going to have to do something really clever, which is unblur my background because Zoom does blur it. So the book tells you how to do it, but it's work that is far more powerful when you do it in a group. And over the past few days, I've been working with a couple of friends. We call them the Academy of Intuitive Mastery. We've been taking them through the work that's in the book and helping people, first of all, connect with their intuition, develop their intuition, and then get a vision for their lives, connecting with their purpose, their mission in life, and giving them some tools to move on and start creating that. So, that's what I've been doing over the past week and a bit.
Okay, well, I like that because, man, I come across some people and they're freaking out. They're like, I don't know what my purpose is. And it's like, I mean, I'm not laughing at them, but it's just like this real childlike anxiety, or they think they're going to spontaneously combust because they haven't found their purpose yet. And a lot of the times what I've also realized is that they're missing some really big clues in their life as to what it should be. And I think it's like a personal development industry induced coma that the internet has put out there for people, because now they see all this stuff about live your dream and live your purpose. And so everybody thinks that they should be doing something that's really grandiose, and it scares them. And so they just don't do anything at all. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. And it's actually something that I specifically address in the book because that's how people view it. And great. I think everybody does have a purpose in life. And that's great news, but it never starts out as something grandiose. And so, for example, if you think of Mother Teresa, and she has this order of nuns and she has convents around the world, but it started out when, she was moved by a poor person on the streets of Calcutta. And it was just that one person. And you will find that across a range of people that have started working with purpose, that it starts very, very small and then builds. And very often our sense of purpose builds out of the trials that we've had, out of the challenges that we've had in life, and our desire to help others who are facing the same challenges, help them surmount them. So that's where purpose comes from. Where it doesn't come from is an egoic place, a place of saying, well, when I was a kid, everybody was talking about starving millions in Africa. So something egoic might be to take that thing and say, well, I'm going to put together a project that's going to help solve this problem, but without really the emotional connection, without the intention. And there is something about each of us that's a divine gift or an innate talent that we've got. And I often think our purpose is around also connecting with that talent and using that to express and help people. I'm going to stop rambling there and get into the conversation.
I mean, you're not rambling. You're making perfect sense. But what about the concept that maybe an individual has more than one purpose, and suppose you're walking down the beach and there's nobody else on the beach, but you see that there's one person in the water and they're drowning. So you jump in and you save them. That's a purpose. Or the guy that gets up super early and runs the street sweeper, that's a purpose, but some people don't feel purposeful in whatever it is they're already doing. So what would you say to that?
Yes, it's certainly something I think about a lot, because somebody has to run the street sweeper and pick up the garbage and appreciate all of that. I think it is possible to be running more than one purpose at a time. I'm thinking in particular, for example, somebody that's caring for an elderly relative or something like that might also be writing or something like that. But yeah, we've usually got a sense of that when it happens. What I was going to say was that the way we see purpose in this work, it reveals itself over time. In other words, if you were shown where you're going to end up in your life, it will be absolutely overwhelming, and it will push you into that place of resistance that you were talking about people online feel about purpose. It's got to be big, and it's got to be impressive, and it's got to... And when we do the work that we do a visioning exercise that gives you a vision perhaps for the next 6 to 15 months, something like that. And that will give you a snapshot of, we do a whole of life thing, but one of those areas of life will be a snapshot of where your purpose is taking you in that time. And then you follow that. And then 6 months, 12 months later, you come back and do the exercise over again and see what the next level is for, whatever it is you're working on, whether it's your purpose or whether it's something else that you're choosing in your life.
Okay, I accept that.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, you did. So, what's your personal definition of intuition?
Intuition is a facility that we've all got, and it's like a connection to some big cloud of information that's out there in the universe. And we can tap into that and we can bring it in. We can bring it in, and it will come to us in all the various clair senses that are available. So some people will get intuition very visually. Some people will get intuition audibly, hear something. Some people will get words. Some people get feelings and chills. It's possible to get smells and tastes. They're not so common. And sometimes you'll just have a knowing. So how it shows up, there's a number of ways it shows up, but it never shows up like a YouTube video. You never have an intuitive guy sitting there telling you exactly what you need to know and how to do things and showing you everything. Usually it's more symbolic than that and needs a little bit of interpretation. And when you're connected with interpretation, when you're connected with intuition, that interpretation is usually quite simple and obvious. You don't have to go around doing too many mental contortions to do it. But by the same token, imagination is a great way of digging into the interpretation of what we get symbolic, what we get feeling-wise. And we've historically kind of downplayed imagination. We say to kids, he's got a very active imagination, to say that he's kind of a little bit out there, a little bit too far away to imaginate. We've kind of dissed imagination. And really, imagination is part of our intuitive faculty. And we find in giving readings that when we lean into imagination, and just in a surrendered way, we've got to be, and just allowing imagination to feed us and not what we want to hear. But when we do that, it opens up like another level of psychic reception, and we get more information. So that's kind of how I see intuition. It's like our connection to that universal cloud of information. But the way I teach it for intuitive purposes, it's great for directing your own life. It's great for making decisions. It's great for getting a vision. It's great for creating a bit of magic in your life. What I don't teach is, making predictions, making forecasts. When, for example, I get an insight about where I'm going with my work, I assume that it takes into account where the external environment is and what is possible for me in that environment, and is giving that to me. And usually the external environment doesn't have a lot of power. That's a whole other conversation that we can have here. But intuition is very much about understanding the level of power that you have within yourself. So that's a few of the things, few aspects of intuition and how I see it.
So the very fact that you're saying that you teach it suggests that it is both an innate ability that we all have, and it's something that you can learn, because I've heard people say, oh, I'm not very creative and I don't even know what it feels like to sense my intuitive faculties or whatever, and I'm like, what do you feel like eating for breakfast today? They're like, oh, I really go for some eggs. Oh my goodness, there you go.
Yeah.
Like it's a sense. If you can feel that, you can tap into your intuition, But I think that, going back to what you were saying as well, there's a certain level of crazy making or gaslighting or just societal conditioning in general, where they do say stuff like, oh, that kid's got a wild imagination, and all these different things through childhood then disable our natural ability to intuit,
Yeah. Hey, look, that's absolutely true. And you said innate intuition, and that's what I found, that everybody's intuitive, but with some people, and very often it's men, who seem to particularly receive this message about being mental, being logical, is very shut down. And you have to be a little bit patient and a little bit supportive and encouraging, and everybody will get something. But then there's another level of intuition, because most people, view intuition as being kind of gut feel or getting a hunches or perhaps seeing messages. And really you can use intuition for a lot beyond those basic kind of warning mechanisms. As I said, you can use it for decisions, to help create visions, to get creative, turn on your super creativity, lots of things. So it's a very powerful tool when you develop it. And most people who say they're intuitive are kind of right at the kind of very ground level. And
yeah, I get you.
Just using it for the danger, and they're not really, when you get trained up, you get very used to making decisions based on intuition, and what it feels like and how to distinguish it from what's coming on from the mind. And that's really important.
So could you share a specific moment when your intuition played a significant role in your life?
Yes. I'll go back to one of the earliest moments. I was in a class with a teacher, and this teacher was from Southern Africa, and he was running a training course in Southern Africa and asked us all to tune in and make a decision and find out whether it was true for us, whether it was true for us to go on that course. And so everybody tuned in, and nearly everybody in the class got, that it was true for them to take this course in Southern Africa. And I think I was about the only one that didn't get that it was true. But it was very clear for me that this wasn't true. This didn't have energy, this training. So I didn't go. Other people did. And some months later, this was going to be the only one in the year. Some months later, I got laid off from my job. I had an end date. And the teacher organised a second round of this training. And it was going to start like a week after I had finished up at this job. And this time it was true for me. It was absolutely perfect. So that is a very simple example of intuition leading me to making really good decisions. I had an absolutely wonderful time. Where they were running it at the time was next to a nature reserve, and there were animals, and we could go driving, everything there. Yeah.
And have you ever ignored your intuition and then regretted it?
Doesn't everybody? It's very common to say, "Oh, I wish I'd listened to my intuition." The problem I have is that prior to really getting involved with this work, which is probably about 12 years ago, I was in the camp that actually believed that I was not intuitive. And until I had it really demonstrated to me, I believed that. So I was up to about 10 years ago, I was never really listening to my intuition. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a good boy in respect to your question. So I do tend to listen to my intuition and act on it, and very rarely act against it. So I'm really struggling to find an example of where I went against it and had a nasty lesson. But I've got one now that's come to me that I just ended up making an investment with a guy where all the numbers added up. But I picked up something wasn't quite right about this guy, but because everything else added up, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And if at the time I had trusted my intuition more, I wouldn't have gone ahead with that.
Man, I feel like I'm the guy that picks up stuff about other people all the time and have never been wrong about it. But then when you try to tell other people, I'm not really getting a good vibe coming off this person, they get like all teenager-ish, like, you don't know what's best for me. You just don't want me to have friends, or you don't like this person because this thing. And I'm like, no, I mean, I trust my intuition, and just maybe you're just too close to it. And I'm getting it, and I'm supposed to tell you. I can only warn you. Do what you feel like. Sheesh.
Yeah.
But then it always turns out bad for them, and they're like, "Oh, you were right. How'd you do that?" And it's like, how'd I do what? I just listened.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. And obviously, to talk to somebody else about something that they're doing where they're messing up, you need permission. But it's very difficult talking to other people about what you're picking up intuitively, particularly if you don't have that level of trust with them and they don't trust you. That person may come back to you afterwards and say, "Oh, you were right," and then next time you warn them, they will listen. But you're also battling, as we said, that conditioning in our society that puts intuition down. And so, that's another reason that pulls people back from listening to you.
Yeah. No matter how many times I warn them, they never listen.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So what strategies do you use to kind of validate your intuition? How do you validate your intuitive feelings before you act on them, is what I really want to say.
That is a really good question. And the answer is that when you go into this work, you enter into like a journey on your life path, and you know that it's on your life path, and you feel that it's on your life path, but it kind of runs and unfolds over the years. And you get little bits of confirmation all the way along. Sometimes you get big bits of confirmation. So we talked about my trip to Uluru and how all the synchronicities flowed and how all the coincidences flowed, and how opportunities came up, how the timing was perfect, particularly around COVID and lockdowns in Australia, which were a little bit harsher than they were in other parts of the world. But it all came together really, really nicely. And then you think, oh, yeah, this is definitely true. But little bits of magic are always showing up. And I ran a class on Sunday. There were 8 of us in the class. It was online. We ran in 2 breakout rooms. And what were we looking at? We were looking at, it was a class that I called From Vision to Why. So when we do this work, we get a vision of what we want in our lives, how we see ourselves in our lives. And so what this class was about was just tracking back from that and understanding, getting a little deeper understanding of the why behind it, what it is that's motivating us to pull in this vision. And one of the breakout rooms spontaneously decided to form like a little self-help mastermind group. And it was, this has never happened before. And I can see those people going on and creating great things. But so you're always getting little bits of confirmation. I keep a journal of what I'm creating and then what's showing up that's particularly magical. There's always 3 or 4 things showing up every week that I wasn't expecting and that's come from left field. And, to me, those are indications of this stuff really working, really creating stuff that really creating outcomes that I wasn't looking for, but are special enough for me to notice and messages for me to keep going.
So besides journaling, are there any other practices that you use to enhance your abilities?
Yes. So the first practice is a daily practice. We create a vision that encompasses various areas of our life and distill that down into a set of 8 choices, to which we add a couple of standard choices, which are very much like goals. But, when you think of goals and intentions and all that sort of thing, choices are a little bit more powerful. There's a little bit less room for weaseling out and of a choice. And it's kind of like a message to your unconscious that of all the possibilities, this is the one. This is the one that I'm aiming at. Very often we have goals that we can kind of go for, but sometimes we ask whether or not this was really what I wanted. But with a choice, it's there. And it's that one outcome out of all the possibilities that you're aiming at. And we go through that every day. And you take like a minute per choice. You drop into your intuitive state, into innocence, we call it. But it's like a meditative state. Tune into that end result of what's in that choice. And when you've got it, you move on and you move on and you move on. And then you go back and get a couple of action items out of going through those choices. So it is a daily practice of going in. And then over and above that, there's just there's a weekly meditation that we do for more strategic purposes. At the moment, I'm very, blessed that I'm in a community where that's run online 3 or 4 times a week. So you just pick up one of those sessions and go and write and journal. So that's a more detailed journaling exercise. And then there are, things that you do through the day as you go through your day, just to retain that connection to intuition.
Interesting. So I noticed that you mentioned something about the subconscious there. And are you saying that intuition is related to subconscious knowledge that is dormant, or like prior experiences, like childhood programming? Like, what do you think?
We do have a part of us that's unconscious. We do have a part of us that is conditioned by childhood programming for sure. And out of that, we also have parts of us that deny try and hide aspects of us that we think are bad, and also try and hide aspects of us that are great and powerful, but we don't want other people to know that about us because somehow it might be embarrassing or something. And, perhaps 40, 50 years ago, being psychic might have been one of those gifts that you've got, but you just don't want everybody to know about it. So we all have that, and that's part of our psychological makeup, but we've got another part of us that is sometimes called a higher self, or sometimes called inner genius, or sometimes called superconscious. But whatever it is, it's a higher part of us that's connecting outwards to a greater field of consciousness. And through that consciousness can pull the information in that's intuition. So it's very, very separate from the conditioning. And it's a state that we access, again, primarily through attaining a state of presence, or a state of going a little bit deeper, a meditative state. So, when we're sitting here in a normal day in some aspect of fight or flight or freeze, we can't access our intuition. Stress is something that really takes away our ability to access intuition, you do need to come out of that, take a couple of breaths, and drop in to access intuition.
Okay, well, you mentioned something to me about men somewhat being conditioned into being rational thinkers and not having as much access to the intuitive faculties. So I know a lot of men that are in crisis because, I'm a coach too. And, a lot of these guys that come to me, it's because they're at rock bottom. They're in crisis. They're in a transition from one place in their life to another. But they have no idea exactly where they want to go, even though when you ask them about it, then they start to tell you exactly where they're going. But it's like they've just completely second guessed themselves. And second guessing can block intuition like nobody's business. But what tips could you give to someone like that, man or woman, who is having trouble balancing intuition with rational thought, and they're kind of on their own on this path, and they want to know how they can, especially with respect to vision and purpose, how they can narrow these things down on their own?
To narrow these things down on their own, what am I going to suggest? First of all, to connect with intuition, or at least to get the panicky stuff out of the way. Breathing is always wonderful, and you've got to slow it down, and you've really got to stay with it for 3-4 minutes sometimes. When it's a normal kind of day, 3 or 4 breaths will bring you into a relaxed state. But sometimes if you're a bit more panicky, breath work is very good. One of my other hats is as a Kundalini yoga teacher. We have and it's a wonderful, wonderful lineage of yoga. And there are special breaths for people that are suffering anxiety or panic work. So I won't go into those now, but generally slowing the breath really helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system and get you out of fight or flight. And you need that to access your intuition. Beyond that, to get to, find more about your purpose, your life. This is something that I take people through in a guided meditation. It's not available for free, but you can always pick the book up, and the book's fairly cheap if you get the ebook, particularly if you get the ebook. And there are details in there about how to access it. Somewhere to contact me if you can't access it. So, Okay,
so Vincent, where can we find your book?
You will find it on vincentgmelling.com /get the book. I think it's /get the book, but if you can't find it there, just go to the homepage and there'll be a bright little button that says get the book, yellow, I think it is. You can, and it's great to order hardback, paperback copies from me. If you want the ebook, or if you're in the States, or if you're in Europe, you can get it at Amazon, or you can get it at some of the other good online book sellers. Just Google "Getting into the Flow," and it will take you to the Amazon for your particular geography, and you'll be able to get it there, both the ebook and the paperback.
Okay, great. So here's the last question. Do you have any last pieces of insight that you intuitively feel guided to share with everyone?
Yes, I do. And it kind of relates to the place of intuition in elevating consciousness. And so, when I was a kid, the Beatles were big. And one of the things that the Beatles did that nobody was kind of expecting at the time was that they went to India and learned meditation. And that was the start of meditation making its way out of being really fringe to making it into it wasn't mainstream by a long chalk, but it was kind of something that yoga and meditation became something that a sizable chunk of people did. And they were kind of assumed to be a little bit out there, but there were a lot of them doing it. And over time, it's grown and mindfulness has gained popularity. Now it is so mainstream that now it's really mainstream. I've got a son who's studying for a PhD in psychology, And his lab is getting money from the Australian government to research mindfulness because they've recognized all the benefits that come from this form of meditation. And the way I see intuition is that it is another step up in consciousness from meditation. So it really builds on that. But what intuition does is that it helps us build our lives in line with our purpose, but really create great things out of our lives, create great adventures. Like I had going to Central Australia. I've been in Australia for 30 years and never been. And then intuition just said, you've got to go this time. And so I went. So it helps us build our lives. It helps us create our purpose. And it helps us, I believe it helps us elevate our vibration. So it's kind of the next level up from meditation. That's where I see it.
I would have to agree with you. Well, Vincent, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
And thank you for having me on here, Jahan. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Really loved it.
Awesome.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious in the brain if they get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality. Whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms, or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean? You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our soul.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast.